Fortunate for me, the burden of child-rearing expenses has come to an end. Let's part ways were the shocking words John dropped on me as we prepared for a funeral. But despite his known selfishness, this revelation surpassed my imagination. He disclosed his desire to marry a woman who did not want children, and the prospect of continued financial losses on child support and medical bills for our son, Charlie, loomed over me. Uttering a wave of relief swept through me at the realization that despite the chilling fact of John being Charlie's father, I would no longer bear the financial strain. Agreeing to the divorce, I acquiesced to letting John take the house, urging him to leave promptly after the funeral. As he departed, I felt a chill, and though my mind cleared, my inside simmered with anger. Reading Charlie's will after John's departure, I discovered shocking reactions from relatives directed at John. It was time for a counterattack. My name is Natasha, a 42-year-old housewife. Formerly a translator in a company, I now work freelance. My husband John, 3 years my senior at 45, and I got married when I was 29. Our son Charlie was born the following year, but John's selfishness meant he played little part in raising him. Charlie's fragile health led to frequent hospital visits, and as his condition worsened at the age of 12, a rainy season brought uncontrollable coughing, food rejection, and unrelenting fever, rushing him to the hospital. We initiated a series of treatments. However, his symptoms showed little improvement. "Mom, sorry for being hospitalized again," Charlie said weakly. "Don't be sorry. You're going to get better, right?" I replied, trying to sound confident. Charlie weakly smiled. Tears welled up in me, but I suppressed them, not wanting to show my distress in front of him. It's when Charlie finally dozed off, I called John repeatedly, but there was no answer. Maybe he was caught up in a business meeting. Anxious, I called him immediately, and this time he picked up promptly. "What now, so early in the morning?" John said, sounding annoyed. "Don't what now, Mew? Why won't you come?" Charlie's fighting so hard. Well, my being there won't cure his sickness, right? And hey, the hospital bills must be piling up again. Tell the doctor to charge him as soon as possible, he added before hanging up. His indifference towards Charlie was not new, but this level of cruelty was unprecedented. Clenching my phone, I shook with anger. As the rainy season turned to summer, Charlie's condition showed no signs of improvement. The doctors doubted he would make it to winter. Getting back on work, I spent more time with him. "Mom, you've been with me from morning to evening lately. Is your work okay?" "It's fine. I'm managing everything from home, so don't worry." "If you say so." Charlie didn't seem convinced. He probably thought my work had dried up because of him. But to avoid causing him more stress, our conversations shifted focus. I positioned my laptop in front of Charlie, working within his line of sight. Charlie, an avid reader, spent most of his days immersed in books. But despite his frailty, he also enjoyed studying and attended the hospital school whenever he felt well enough. I wanted to grant him every wish, but John, on the contrary, expressed clear displeasure. He not only avoided visiting Charlie, but also incessantly complained at home. Is that kid still not discharged? Staying in a private room? Huh? But a waste of money. How can you say that when your son is fighting so hard? Why don't you visit him for once? I'm busy, okay? You visiting him is enough. An's attitude remained unchanged, and he never visited Charlie in the hospital, despite being his father. I knew Charlie must be feeling lonely, but I refrained from forcing John to visit against his will. By this time, John often came home late, reeking of alcohol. He attributed it to client entertaining, but lipstick on laundered shirts and motel receipts hinted at an affair. He couldn't spare time for Charlie, but found time for another woman. My love for John had dwindled, but I hesitated to divorce him, fearing it would sadden Charlie. Enduring the situation, Charlie's health deteriorated. An's late arrivals continued, marked by the scent of alcohol. He claimed it was for client entertaining, but lipstick-stained shirts and motel receipts suggested otherwise. While my affection for John had waned, I worried that divorcing him would bring further distress to Charlie. During this time, Charlie's condition worsened. The doctor delivered shocking news during his summoned meeting.
I'm sorry, but he only has about a month left. Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? There's not much more we can do. We'll do our best for the variant.
And for about half a month, the emotional journey grew more intense. We persisted with treatment, consulting with the doctor regularly, but as anticipated, Charlie's frail body continued to weaken.
Faced with his deteriorating condition, Charlie voiced his concerns.
Am I going to be gone soon? There's so much more you want to do, right? Encouraging him with reassuring words, I would privately shed tears away from Charlie's sight. But truly, when the doctor conveyed that further treatment would be futile, I made the difficult decision to take Charlie home for his final days. We take Charlie home to spend his final moments. Are we going home?
Charlie asked weakly.
Yes, the doctor said a change of scenery for a few days would be good. Charlie's feeble yet childlike response brought a mixture of joy and sorrow. He informed John about the decision, but all he could muster was an indifferent, "It's fine," before leaving the house. I had lost all hope in him, believing him beyond redemption. The discharge was scheduled for the next evening, prompting me to immerse myself in preparations and paperwork. As I packed Charlie's belongings, he suddenly posed a question.
Mom, do you love Dad? Taken aback by the unexpected inquiry, I paused. Dad doesn't seem interested in marrying you. So if you don't love Dad, I want you to divorce and live your life.
But it became apparent that Charlie had sensed the strained relationship between John and me. Yet as a parent, I couldn't let him worry about us until the end. Swiftly putting on a smile, I responded, "What are you talking about? I love your dad and he cares about us too. He's just too busy to visit, so don't worry, okay?" But obviously, Charlie didn't seem convinced. But eventually, Charlie stopped pursuing the matter after that. He fell asleep, and I'd breathe a sigh of relief. 2 days later, Charlie passed away at home. John never showed up until the end, and I stayed by Charlie's side, holding his cooling body, crying out loud, "Charlie, Charlie," and clinging to the memories of every moment he came into my life. But I can see, the doctor and a nurse who had been with us since Charlie was young came to mourn and explain the next steps. One of them handed me a letter from Charlie's bag saying, "This is from Charlie. He said to give it to you if anything happened." I received the letter expressing gratitude to the doctor and the nurse. I was alone without John's help and with Charlie suffering from his illness. I could only be thankful to those who kindly supported us through this difficult time. After they left, I opened the letter beside Charlie. The content made me cry out in surprise. Charlie's letter contained not only his gratitude but also something shocking. Reading it, I felt my blood boil. Anxiety, as even as the funeral director came to discuss arrangements, my mind was consumed by the letter's content. Still, I had to decide on the details for Charlie's sake, planning a small, homey funeral. Then, the day before the funeral, John finally showed his face, still reeking of alcohol. I had no energy left to confront him.
You aged.
Tomorrow is Charlie's funeral. Where have you been? I told you I was at work. What's with all these complaints? Why did I marry such a man? I thought, feeling drained and frustrated. Oh, without him, my mind was in turmoil. Charlie was no longer with us, and John's attitude, treating Charlie as if he were some distant relative, filled me with simmering anger. However, arguing with him seemed pointless, so I decided to focus on the funeral arrangements for the next day.
Akimi, no more children expenses. Let's get divorced.
I couldn't hide my shock at his callous words. That despite knowing his selfish nature, this was beyond anything I had expected.
There's a woman I want to marry, but she doesn't want kids.
So, with Charlie alive, the child support and medical expenses would drain my money. Ah, what a relief. I felt a chill run through me at the realization that such a man was Charlie's father. As my head cleared, my anger boiled over, and I reluctantly agreed to the divorce. And then, I'll take the house. Let's come soon as you can. Let's just wait until after the funeral, John declared before leaving on the day of the funeral. I read Charlie's will, and John turned pale while relatives glared at him with fierce faces. Now it was time for my counterattack. Charlie's will, which I read aloud, exposed John's affair. Until that moment, John had played the role of a grieving father, crying loudly. "How could such a letter be real?" he said. "It's not true, right, Natasha?" I felt sorry for not visiting because of work, but this is too much, John stammered, attempting to deflect the truth revealed in Charlie's final words. I silently retrieved an envelope from my bag and thrust the photos in front of John. "You took pictures. Crippled by being caught in a compromising photo, you took pictures?" John stumbled over his words, his face still pale. I smiled sweetly and asked the relatives to pass around a few more photos that I had. Whispers of disgust and small cries of shock arose from all around. Ipupu not visiting his frail son, but being seen with this woman in such a scandalous manner. The glares at John intensified, and he slumped down in his seat. I then presented John with the divorce papers. He looked up at me in shock, his voice cracking as if he was about to cry. "You didn't pay attention to me because you were always nursing him. It was just a fling. Forgive me."
I don't want a divorce, John pleaded.
Not paying attention, I replied. "You're not a child. I repeatedly asked you to help me nurse him, but you always ran away, claiming work as an excuse. But nursing is dirty, I said as soon as John spoke. But as soon as John said that, he disappeared from my view. Actions? What do you mean nursing your own son is dirty enough with your jokes? A parent who doesn't care for their child isn't a parent at all. You're the lowest of the low. These my in-laws, who had always adored Charlie, celebrated every hospital discharge with a meal, bought Charlie his favorite things, and never missed a visit. They've been covering for John, believing his excuses about being busy at work. Ever imagining their own son could be such a disgrace, his tears streaked their faces as they glared at John, who sat in disbelief, clutching his cheek where he'd been struck. Natasha, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. If we knew he was such a man, we would have encouraged you to divorce him sooner. It wasn't their fault. Charlie loved his grandparents, and their presence was one reason I hadn't divorced John. You guys are not to blame. Look, Charlie's letter says, "Thank you and stay healthy." Charlie and I both love you very much, Natasha. Thank you. Sorry.
Hugged me, sobbing quietly.
Was all crying, apologizing to me.
I'll be ridiculous. She's just an old lady who couldn't even take care of her husband. A failure of a wife.
John, as my father-in-law, lunged towards John. I stepped in front of John, and he looked at me with a fearful yet defiant glare. What? What's you got something to say? Not really. This is reality. No one here is on your side. Listen and make sure to pay back the money you've borrowed from many people. Haven't you? How do you know about that? At my words, relatives who had lent John money began murmuring. After reading Charlie's letter, I had contacted the relatives. Charlie had overheard John's expensive activities involving a woman from a nightclub who loved lavish things like brand products and overseas trips. John, paying for all of it, could never afford such a lifestyle on his salary alone. Realizing this, I had checked if anyone had lent him money, and to my surprise, it wasn't just John's relatives, but mine as well. Under the pretense of Charlie's medical expenses, while I had initially informed them just to thank and promise repayment, with the current situation, they realized John had used the money not for Charlie but for his affair. Don't joke with me. Give me back my $20,000 right now. Relatives asked John for the money they had lent him. His face turned even paler with each claim. Turning to me, he weakly smiled and said, "Natasha, we're a couple, right? You'll help me, won't you?" I responded, "What? Are you serious? You didn't help with nursing, didn't contribute to medical or living expenses, and instead borrowed from everyone for your own selfish needs. Unbelievable. Why would I help you? Don't say things like that." I slumped back down, seemingly out of energy to retort. I looked down at him, ready to deliver the final blow, and called to the entrance, "Cheryl, please come in." I pulled out some documents from my bag and handed them to John.
He shockingly read them, then suddenly pushed Cheryl away. "Hey, what's this? Divorce of the kid, you never told me. Didn't you say the money was for your family living far away? I didn't lie, my son is my family. So I've been with a used woman. Where's the true? Love, you're after my money, you're only after my body."
Threw her shoe at John.
and lunged at her, and they started brawling like children, but fortunately, a security guard intervened. I approached the disheveled pair with a smile. "John, please sign the divorce papers and arrange for the alimony." "Cheryl, I won't reduce your compensation by a single cent, and your ex-husband said something about your affairs being a sickness that can't be cured. Seems like you have a few partners, so with that kind of leeway, expect enforced payments for the child support, treatment costs, and alimony." "That's impossible." Ron hung his head, speechless, and Cheryl was led away by the security, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I apologized to each relative for the disturbance, and they comforted me, bringing me to tears. After that, my divorce from John was finalized, and we also agreed on the amount of alimony he had to pay, just as I had requested. This incident infuriated his parents tremendously. Moreover, the extended family was outraged to discover they had been deceived too, giving him the cold shoulder. Of course, he was asked to return the money he embezzled, and it seems like he borrowed it from some shady sources. To repay the debt, he's been working his fingers to the bone with multiple jobs, but the repayment is so huge that he's rumored to have nothing left for living expenses. Eventually, unable to keep up with the ballooning interest, last month he was taken away by some intimidating guys. His parents don't even intend to file a missing person report, so while I hope he's safe, I can't help but wish he suffers unimaginable pain. As for Cheryl, all the men she dated found out about her affairs and the child she had, cutting off all financial support. At 30, she's considered old for her line of work, struggling to attract clients, and eventually had to turn to her parents. She paid the alimony in one lump sum. However, she's since been sent to work on a farm on some island, with her wages going directly to her parents for debt repayment. As for me, I moved with Charlie's memorial tablet. I bought a house near the ocean, something Charlie always wanted, and now live there alone with the cat he wished for. I look forward to the times when my in-laws visit and we reminisce about Charlie. As another letter from Charlie arrived for me. In it, he wrote in slightly blurred script about his gratitude, apologies for leaving for heaven first, and his wish to be my child again in another life. But the letter ended with, "Matsule titam and stay true to yourself. Stay healthy and live a long life," inspiring me to live my life for Charlie. But despite the sadness of not seeing my beloved child grow up, I'm living each day to the fullest.